Hey everyone, first off, on behalf of our sponsors and myself, let me thank you for a great year of downloads here on the free feed. And since it's the holiday season, we thought we would give you a few gifts. From now until the end of the year, we will release for free full Patreon episodes. This year, we will focus on episodes dealing with new books that might make a great last-minute holiday gift for the Gettys nerd in your family, or, let's face it, a gift for yourself. We hope you enjoy these episodes, get a hold of one or all of the books, and join our community over at patreon.com/addressinggettysburg. And that's also where you'll find this episode in its entirety. And to make it easy for you, the link is in the description. But act fast because they become patron-only episodes on January 1st. So from all of us here at Addressing Gettysburg to you and yours, happy holidays.
From the Gettysburg Museum of History Studios, you're listening to Addressing Gettysburg.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this episode of Addressing Gettysburg. And today we are talking with our friend Scott Hartwig about this big thing. I dread the thought of the place. It's the second volume in his Maryland campaign series. And welcome, Scott.
Good to be here, Matt.
So when did you start doing both of these?
Well, the first volume, pull
that mic a little closer to you. Sorry, I should have given you that instruction.
Yeah, the first volume, To Antietam Creek, was about a 20-year project.
20 years?
Yeah.
So while you were working here at Gettysburg National Military Park, you were kind of working on that on the side?
Right. Raising 3 kids.
Yeah.
Doing all the stuff that everybody does. And so it was actually kind of a joke in the Park Service, amongst friends in the Park Service. The joke was, Hartwig's working on this book on Antietam, and as if that is never going to really happen. Because, when I worked at the park, I had the park library as part of my duties to take care of, and I had a lot of researchers that would come in there, and for every 20 or 30 or 40 people that came in who were researching and were going to write a book, maybe one did.
Okay.
So a lot of people say they're going to write a book. Well, anyway, I was slow and steady. So when I start something, I'm going to finish it. It might take me a long time.
Right. But it wins the race.
Yeah.
Slow and steady.
Yeah. So that was a long one. This one, I started in 2014.
Jeez. Uh-huh.
And I finished it in 2022. I'm pretty sure it was 2022 I finished it. Because it takes about a year when you finish a book like this. It's about a year's project to do all the work that you do to get it into publication. So they'll have a couple of readers who will read through it, and then the readers may come back to you with some things that they suggest that you look at or revise or expand upon or whatever.
Now, are these readers historians?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So at Johns Hopkins University Press, they ask me for a number of names, and that's the way a lot of presses work. University presses, they'll ask the writer for names of people, and if you're responsible, what you want to do is you want to get people who are going to be critical. You don't want somebody to go, wow, this guy's the greatest thing in the world. Yeah.
Right.
No, you do not want that. You want somebody who's going to be critical, who also knows the subject really, really well. So I had 2 readers on my book. They were both really, really good, and had some good suggestions in there. So you make some revisions in that, send it back in, then they send it to a copy editor, and then that takes several months because the copy editor sends you the chapters, and then you go through the copy edits that they make, and then there might be questions about stuff that they have in there. So it just takes a little while to do that.
Are those more like grammatical and punctuation and stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And also to make sure, that, you speak with the same voice throughout the whole thing.
Yes.
They kind of unify it all just in case. Because when you work on something over a long time period,
your voice changes.
You can. Yeah, you can do that. So you want to make sure you keep the same voice. So you finish with that, and then there's a lot of little detailed things that you got to take care of to make sure that the formatting is right for what they're doing, and then there's some other process that I'm forgetting in there. But then ultimately it leads to the biggest nightmare of any of these books is the index. So the index, and when you get the index, what usually happens is the book is ready to go to the printer. So they have only a limited time. So it's not like they can give you the book and say, okay, you've got like 4 months or 5 months to index it. Usually what it is they'll be like, you have 4 or 5 months or 4 or 5 weeks to index the whole book. So you got to, and if you don't get it done in that time, then they don't publish the book when they plan on publishing it. It'll get pushed back. So you don't want that to happen.
Right.
You say you got to bust your butt and get that thing done. Now, I did not do the index by myself. I am not that crazy.
Right.
My wife, her sister, and a good friend of mine, Eric Fisher, who helped me, Eric Fisher and my wife helped me on the last book. We all took a chunk of the index. And so
walk me through that process, though. So what do you have to actually reread the book and then like tick off every time someone or something is mentioned? Like, how does that? I always wondered how they index books.
Well, the way you can do it now. It used to be you had to go through the book page by page,
right?
But now when you have the whole document in the PDF, so let's say I'm going to index the 45th Pennsylvania Infantry. So I'm going to type in 45th PA and 45th Pennsylvania.
Okay.
So you put both of them in there. You have to make sure you put both in there. Sure. And you might just put 45th in just to make sure that you get them all. And then you're going to go through and you're going to see where the 45th Pennsylvania is mentioned. And if it's somebody big, like let's say you're doing George B. McClellan in a book like this, well, then you do have to go through it. You look at all the references to McClellan. There's going to be hundreds of them.
Sure.
And then you look at how he's referenced. So is it maybe about McClellan's, decision on not renewing the attack on September 18th? Well, that's a separate category in the under the McClellan head, McClellan in the index. So it's a lot of that is a judgment call because some people I've seen in their indexes, they break it down. I don't know how they have the time to do it, but it's unbelievable. It's great because you can go right to things that you're looking for.
Right.
And then you'll find indexes where all they do is they'll say George B. McClellan, and you'll see like 300 pages.
Right.
And there's no breakdown.
Yeah.
So
now you got to go find what you're looking for.
You have to look through every single page. So what I tried to kind of split the middle. I didn't do as much of a breakdown as some people do, but I did a breakdown so that for the major things I thought, and what you're always thinking in terms of is somebody who's using this book in a scholarly way, or maybe they're writing a paper or something like that, and they want to know about Edwin Sumner in the Battle of Antietam. You're going to break it down in there so that these are the most important things I think about Edwin Sumner and the Battle of Antietam.
Right.
And these are the categories that he fits in. So it makes it a lot easier for the person who's trying to glean that out of the book.
Yeah, okay.
So but it takes a lot of time. It's not a fun process.
I would imagine that would be the most frustrating part because you finished the whole freaking book and now you've got to go back and make note of where you mention everything that you mentioned.
But the one thing about the index that I found to be really interesting is the index also speaks to, like, for example, I realized as I went through the index, certain artillery batteries that you see feature prominently in the battle, and then you'll find some artillery batteries aren't even mentioned. So they're present on the battlefield. They don't do anything.
Okay.
They're not even engaged.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I noticed is that the Confederate batteries in the battle are really heavily engaged, almost all of them. The Union Army, there's a fair number of artillery batteries who don't do any firing at all and don't do any fighting. And then there's others who do a tremendous amount. So what that teaches me when I look at that is I'm like, they didn't make effective use of all of the weapons that they had available to them.
Right.
They held a lot of them back, and there were places on the field they could have used them. So the index sometimes can make you realize trends that might have occurred during the battle that you weren't aware of when you were writing the book. So there's some definite value to doing the index.
So 20 years it's taken you to do this. There had to be times where you didn't touch it for months or maybe a year or two, right?
Never a time I didn't touch it for a year or two.
Okay.
But a time I didn't touch it for a month or two. Like when I was doing the first book, during this July, I'm not doing anything.
Right.
I mean,
right. Yeah.
June, even for Memorial Day. Like a lot of times when we're super, super busy at the park, I did not have time, or I just didn't have any energy by the time I got home. And, my two sons were both in Little League and Teener League, and my one son was really involved in soccer, and then my daughter was doing softball and a bunch of other things. So there was always, in the
Something
summertime,
else.
a lot of things going on. Now, this second book, that I had a regular schedule. So that book, writing that book was my job.
Okay.
So I'd get up, take the dog for a walk, get home, I'd work on the book the rest of the morning. Sometimes, certain days of the week, I would work on it in the afternoons. Other days of the week, I go to the Y in the afternoon. But you find that you can do about 3 hours is the max that you can really dedicate to writing and researching and thinking and being creative. And then after that, you start to lose your edge.
Yeah.
So you better just stop. And pick it up again the next day. But the thing is, if you have a regular schedule, you will be amazed at how much you get done.
So I've always wondered that because when I started this whole thing, I started writing what I call narrative episodes, where it's a narration and I do music and sound effects and other people reading quotes and stuff. And, so you got to research it, you got to write it. There's a lot of creativity involved.
Right.
And creativity for me is something that you either have or you don't.
Yeah.
I can't do it on a schedule. When I do it on a schedule, the work suffers.
That's right.
And I've been in a writer's block for 2 years now. I can't because what's happened in between was when I started it, this wasn't anything. And I hadn't put anything out yet. I had another job. This was on the side. It was my passion, But then once it becomes my job, and there's all these other components to it to keep all the balls in the air, you don't have the time or, as you mentioned, the energy to sit down and write.
Right.
Because it takes a lot. Mm-hmm. Like you got to kind of like spill your guts, Right. It's a laborious process. So, but you found though, but you're saying that for the second book, you were retired. Yeah. So you had all the time in the world.
I did.
So it's easier. It's just like, this is my one thing I have to do.
Right.
And work out. Right. So and the working out is good because that keeps everything going, right? You got to do that. Yeah. So I could see that, I'm not retired, so I don't have that luxury yet.
No, exactly. And that's why, the first book, it took 20 years and it was a really, that was a really hard process because I went through periods where, and I wrote in the evenings then. Okay. And, there were some evenings you'd sit there and you just stare at your computer screen for an hour.
Right.
And maybe you'd get a sentence.
Yep.
But sometimes if you were able to get that sentence, the next night you got 2 paragraphs or a page.
Sure.
Because the sentence broke the logjam.
Right.
But I've never met anybody who doesn't, even people that I'm amazed at what a great writer they are. I've even read about them. They're like, they have writer block.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes they just can't. But it's also... It's like musicians, you'll have somebody who turns out this phenomenal album and then they become famous and there's all these demands on their time and they don't have the creative time anymore. Yep. That was one of the things that, that I love dog walking is when I'd be walking my dog, I'm also involved in the local theater. So if I wasn't rehearsing my lines for a theatrical production that I was in, I was going over in my mind the chapter I was working on and thinking about what I was trying to say with it and what was going on and what I'd been researching. And a lot of times just having that period where you can just be walking and you're out in the park and there's nobody around and you're with your thoughts and your doggy, a lot of things can come to you. And then you get home and then you can start writing and being creative because you've had that. It's kind of like a refueling period for your creative part of you.
Does solitude help you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.